Beloved listeners, welcome. I'm grateful you're here. Truly. You didn't arrive by accident, and neither did your curiosity about money, about investing, about shaping a better future with your own hands. Sit quietly with me for a moment, breathe, and listen with your heart as much as your mind. Somewhere tonight, someone is lying awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why they work so hard and still feel behind. Somewhere else, another person is one decision away from a different life, but they don't know it yet. Destiny is strange like that. Wealth doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It whispers, and only the patient hear it. I've watched fortunes rise from boredom, discipline, and long stretches of doing nothing. And I've watched fortunes vanish in moments of excitement. The difference was never intelligence. It was temperament. It was understanding how the world really works and having the humility to wait. Now, let me tell you something gently, especially if you're new to investing in this coming year, 2026 and beyond. Investing is not about getting rich. That's what fools think. Investing is about not staying poor, and more importantly, about buying peace of mind over life. I remember a young man once, smart, hardworking, who came to me with tired eyes. He said, "I save every month, but it feels useless. Inflation eats it, life eats it." And I asked him one simple question. Where does your money go after you earn it? He didn't know. That's where most people lose the game. Not in the market, but in awareness. For beginners, the first investment is not a stock, not crypto, not real estate. It's understanding. You must learn how money behaves when left alone, and how badly it behaves when you interfere emotionally. Money, like a child, needs boundaries and time. Here's the quiet truth. No one likes to sell you. You do not need to predict the future. You need to survive it. Too many beginners rush in with excitement, chasing hot tips, listening to loud voices, believing that activity equals progress. It doesn't. In investing, activity is often the enemy. The market rewards patience the way nature rewards trees, slowly, silently, and without apology. I once watched a small business owner risk everything on a sure thing. He couldn't sleep. He checked prices every hour. He confused motion with wisdom. When it failed, he said the market was cruel. It wasn't, it was indifferent. And indifference is far more dangerous than cruelty because it doesn't care about your hopes. So if you're beginning, start here. Understand that the market is a place where money moves from the impatient to the patient, from the emotional to the disciplined, from those seeking excitement to those seeking understanding. Investing is not about being right today. It's about being sane for decades. You don't need complex strategies. You need simple principles held firmly. Spend less than you earn. Avoid debt that steals your sleep. Build an emergency cushion so fear doesn't force bad decisions. Then, and only then, let your money work quietly in good businesses over long periods of time. And remember this, compounding is not just mathematical, it's psychological. Small good habits repeated year after year create a life that looks miraculous from the outside and feels peaceful from the inside. If you're just starting, don't be ashamed of starting small. Every giant oak began as something you could crush between your fingers. What matters is direction, not speed. The world in 2026 will move faster, shout louder, and tempt you more aggressively than ever before. Your advantage will not be speed, it will be calm. Your edge will be the ability to sit still while others panic and to act thoughtfully when others gamble. And here's the deeper lesson most never learn. Money is not the goal. Money is the tool that gives you control over your time, your dignity, and your choices. Invest with that purpose, and you'll never feel poor again, no matter the numbers on a screen. So begin with humility, begin with patience, begin with the long view, because the long view is where wisdom lives. And this is only the beginning. Most people think the hardest part of investing is choosing what to buy. It isn't. The hardest part is learning how to behave while you own it. You see, once you place your money into an investment, something subtle happens inside you. Fear wakes up. Greed clears its throat, doubt starts whispering stories late at night, and suddenly the calm logic you used to invest is replaced by emotion. That is where beginners stumble, not because they lack knowledge, but because they underestimate themselves. I've seen brilliant people ruin perfectly good investments simply because they couldn't tolerate boredom. They wanted excitement. They wanted confirmation. They wanted to feel smart every week. The market doesn't reward that. It rewards those who can endure long periods of silence and still believe. Let me tell you a small story. There was a woman I once met who invested modestly every month. No headlines, no bragging, no checking prices every day. She treated investing like brushing her teeth. Unexciting, consistent, almost forgettable. Years later, her portfolio quietly surpassed that of friends who were constantly trading, constantly optimizing, constantly stressed. When asked how she did it, she smiled and said, "I stayed out of my own way." That is wisdom. If you're a beginner, understand this deeply. The market will test you before it rewards you. There will be years where nothing seems to happen. You'll wonder if you're foolish for waiting while others boast about fast gains. You'll feel tempted to abandon your plan for something shinier. This is the exact moment when your future is decided not by what you buy, but by whether you hold. Patience is not passive. It is an active discipline. It is choosing not to react when every instinct tells you to move. Now let's talk simply, because simplicity is a form of intelligence. As a beginner, you do not need dozens of investments. You need a few good ones, bought at sensible prices, in businesses or funds that will still matter years from now. The future belongs to durability, not novelty. Trends fade, human behavior doesn't. Ask yourself basic questions. Does this business solve a real problem? Will people still need this in 10 years? Is it run by people I would trust with my own family savings? If you can't answer those calmly, you're speculating, not investing. And speculation is seductive. It promises speed. It flatters the ego. It convinces you that you're early, special, chosen. Investing, on the other hand, feels slow and almost dull. That's why it works. Most people can't tolerate dullness. Another quiet truth beginners must hear: losses are part of the tuition. You will make mistakes. Everyone does. The goal is not to avoid mistakes. It's to avoid fatal ones. Don't risk money you can't afford to wait for. Don't borrow to invest. Don't let one decision define your entire future. Survival comes first. Always. The people who win in the long run are not the boldest. They are the ones who are still standing. As the years pass, something beautiful happens if you stay consistent. Your money begins to work harder than you do. Your stress lessens. Your confidence becomes quieter, deeper. You stop chasing, you start choosing. And slowly, very slowly, wealth stops feeling like a finish line and starts feeling like a foundation. Remember this: if you remember nothing else from today, you don't need to beat the market. You need to let the market work for you. Build a plan you can live with. Automate it if possible. Review it occasionally, not obsessively. And protect your mind as carefully as you protect your capital, because a calm mind is the greatest asset you'll ever own. Risk is one of the most misunderstood words in investing. Beginners often think risk means volatility, prices moving up and down. That's noise. Real risk is far more personal and far more permanent. Real risk is losing purchasing power over a lifetime. Real risk is being forced to sell at the wrong moment because you didn't prepare emotionally or financially. Real risk is not knowing what you own or why you own it. I've seen people panic during market declines and say, "I didn't know it could fall this much." And I always thought the same thing. If you didn't know that, you never understood what you bought. So let me slow this down for you. If you're new to investing, your first job is not to maximize returns. Your first job is to minimize regret. Build a structure that allows you to sleep at night even when the world feels unstable, because the world will feel unstable often. There was a time when markets fell hard, headlines screamed, experts argued, fear became fashionable. A young couple I knew had invested carefully within their means. They didn't understand every technical detail, but they understood themselves. They had cash set aside. They had no debt choking their decisions. And when fear arrived, they didn't freeze and they didn't flee. They waited. Years later, those same investments looked obvious. But weren't obvious at the time. They were uncomfortable. That's what opportunity usually feels like, uncomfortable and lonely. Now listen closely because this matters deeply for beginners in the years ahead. Time is not just your friend, it's your unfair advantage. If you are young or simply early in your investing journey, you can survive mistakes that others can't, but only if you stay disciplined. Time forgives errors made with humility. It punishes arrogance instantly. This is why consistency matters more than brilliance. Investing a modest amount regularly through good times and bad does something extraordinary. It removes ego from the process. You are no longer trying to outsmart the market. You are partnering with it. You accept that you don't know what will happen next year, but you are confident in what happens over many years, and that confidence is powerful. Too many people wait for the perfect moment to start. There is no perfect moment. There is only now and the habit you build today. Markets will rise and fall long after this conversation ends. The question is whether you will still be there. Let me say something that might surprise you. Doing nothing is often the hardest decision. You'll be tempted to react to news, to opinions, to friends who suddenly sound like financial geniuses during bull markets. You'll feel foolish staying calm while others seem to profit quickly. But remember this: luck looks like skill in the short term. Skill looks like luck in the long term. Most beginners fail not because they choose bad investments, but because they abandon good ones too early. They underestimate how long-term really is. They think in months. Wealth thinks in decades. And there is something else you must learn early: the power of saying no. Every year, countless opportunities will wave at you, promising extraordinary returns. Most of them are distractions. Every yes costs you time, focus, and emotional energy. The great investors I've known weren't constantly searching. They were constantly filtering. They said no far more often than they said yes. Saying no protects your capital, but more importantly, it protects your clarity. As you grow as an investor, you'll notice a shift. You'll stop asking, how much can I make? And start asking, what could go wrong? That's not pessimism, that's maturity. Optimism without caution is gambling. Caution without optimism is paralysis. Wisdom lives in the balance. And when you finally understand risk, truly understand it, fear loses its grip. Not because danger disappears, but because you've prepared for it. This journey is not about becoming fearless. It's about becoming steady. And steadiness over time becomes something extraordinary. There's still more ahead, because we haven't yet spoken about purpose, about why money matters only when it aligns with who you are, and how beginners can build not just wealth, but a life that feels whole. At some point in your investing journey, if you stay honest and reflective, a quiet question will surface. Why am I doing this? Not how much you want to make, not how fast, but why? Money without purpose is a restless thing. It never feels like enough. It keeps you anxious even when you have plenty. I've known people with impressive portfolios who were still terrified because their money had no meaning beyond numbers on a screen. For beginners, this is an advantage you don't yet realize. You are early enough to decide what role money will play in your life, instead of letting it decide for you. I once met a man who chased returns aggressively for years. He won often, he lost loudly, but he never asked what he was building toward. One day, after a bad stretch, he said something revealing, "I don't even come." what enough looks like. That's a dangerous place to be. So let me offer you something steadier. Invest to support the life you want, not to escape the life you're living. If your vision is freedom, invest for durability. If your vision is security, invest for resilience. If your vision is impact, invest with patience and integrity. Purpose changes how you react to markets. When your why is clear, temporary losses hurt less. You stop making desperate moves. You stop comparing yourself to strangers. You stop confusing wealth with worth. This is where beginners often become wise earlier than experts, if they're paying attention. Another truth rarely spoken aloud. Money amplifies who you already are. If you're impatient now, more money won't fix that. If you're thoughtful now, more money will magnify it. Investing is not just a financial journey. It's a character test stretched across decades. That's why consistency is sacred. Consistency says, I trust the process more than my moods. It says, I don't need excitement to feel progress. It says, I'm willing to look boring today so I can live peacefully tomorrow. The market will try to seduce you into abandoning consistency. It will show you people who got rich quickly. It will hide the thousands who lost quietly. You won't see their regret, but it's there. Let me tell you about regret. The most painful regret in investing is not losing money. It's knowing you broke your own rules. People can recover financially. What's harder to rebuild is self-trust. Every time you chase something you don't understand, every time you panic sell something you once believed in, you teach yourself that you can't be relied upon. That erosion is subtle and devastating. So make rules you can keep, simple rules, human rules, rules that respect your temperament. If market drops make you anxious, don't overexpose yourself. If headlines tempt you, reduce noise. If checking prices ruins your day, stop checking. Discipline is not punishment, it's protection. And as the years pass, something unexpected happens when you invest with purpose. Your relationship with money softens. It becomes less emotional, less dramatic. You stop arguing with the market, you accept it. And acceptance is power. You'll notice that wealth built slowly carries a different energy. It doesn't shout. It doesn't beg for attention. It simply supports your life quietly, like a strong foundation under a calm home. That's the kind of wealth worth building. As a beginner, you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to avoid the traps that steal time and peace. You need to protect your downside, nurture your patience, and keep your ego on a short leash. Because the real reward of investing is not the money you accumulate. It's the person you become while accumulating it. We still have more to uncover about staying grounded as success grows, about avoiding complacency, and about why the end goal of investing is not wealth, but freedom of mind as success begins to arrive. Quietly at first, another danger appears, complacency. It doesn't announce itself. It feels comfortable. It feels earned. You start to believe the rules no longer apply to you. You loosen discipline. You listen a little more to your ego and a little less to reality. This is how many solid investors undo years of good behavior. So hear this gently. Success does not make you smarter. It makes you less alert if you're not careful. I've watched people build wealth patiently for 20 years and then damage it in 2, simply because they forgot what got them there. They mistook a favorable environment for personal brilliance. They took risks they didn't need to take. They chased more when they already had enough. Enough, that word R, returns again and again for a reason. As you grow, one of the most important skills you can develop is knowing when to stop reaching. The world will always encourage you to want more. Advertisements, comparisons, stories of extraordinary wins, they never end. But peace comes from discernment, not accumulation. For beginners, this lesson planted early becomes a lifelong advantage. Your goal is not maximum returns. Your goal is sufficient returns with minimal regret. This means adjusting as your life changes. What felt reasonable risk at 25 may feel foolish at 50%. That's not weakness. That's wisdom responding to reality. Investing is not static. It evolves with you. There's also something deeply important about humility in investing. The market is a powerful teacher and a ruthless one. It doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't reward effort. It only responds to reality. When you accept this, you stop arguing with outcomes. You start learning from it. Losses become information. Mistakes become tuition. Silence becomes guidance. And humility keeps you curious. Curiosity is what prevents stagnation. It's what keeps you reading, thinking, and questioning even when things are going well. The moment you believe you've figured it out, you've stopped growing. And that's when risk quietly multiplies. Let me share something personal in spirit. The most content investors I've known were not obsessed with markets. They had full lives. They read widely. They cared about relationships, health, and learning. Investing was important, but it was not their identity. That balance matters more than people realize. If investing becomes your emotional center, every fluctuation will shake you. If it's simply a tool in a meaningful life, volatility loses its power. You become harder to manipulate by markets, by media, by fear. This is especially critical as technology accelerates and information floods your attention. In the coming years, you'll be surrounded by noise disguised as opportunity. The ability to ignore will be more valuable than the ability to analyze. And ignoring is a skill. It requires confidence in your process. It requires clarity in your goals. It requires remembering that doing nothing is often the most rational action. As you advance, protect your time as fiercely as your money. Time is the one asset compounding can't replace. Don't waste it reacting to every movement. Don't donate it to anxiety. A well-built portfolio should serve your life, not consume it. So check in with yourself regularly, not the market. Ask questions like, am I still investing in ways I understand? Am I sleeping well? Am I still aligned with my original purpose? If the answer changes, adjust calmly. No drama, no self-blame, just thoughtful correction. Because the highest level of investing is not domination of the market. It's mastery of yourself. And when you reach that level, even briefly, you realize something profound. The freedom you were seeking was never just financial, it was mental. If you've listened carefully up to this point, something inside you may already feel different. Not excited, not rushed, but steadier. That steadiness is the signal you're ready to understand the final and most important lesson of investing, especially for those just beginning. Investing is not an event. It is a philosophy you live by. Most people approach money episodically. They invest when they feel confident. They retreat when they feel afraid. Their actions are reactions. Their strategy changes with the weather. Over a lifetime, that inconsistency costs them more than any single bad decision ever could. The wise approach is quieter. You decide in advance who you are as an investor, and then you behave accordingly, regardless of mood, noise, or trend. You accept that uncertainty is permanent. You stop demanding certainty from a world that has never offered it. This acceptance changes everything. When markets rise, you don't feel invincible. When markets fall, you don't feel doomed. You remain centered. That is the state where good decisions come from. For beginners, this is where the journey truly begins. Not when you open an account, not when you make your first purchase, but when you internalize that wealth is built by temperament far more than intellect. Let me leave you with a story that captures this fully. There was an older investor who rarely spoke at gatherings, while others debated predictions and argued over forecasts. He listened. When asked his opinion, he said something simple. I try to be reasonable when others are emotional. That was his entire strategy. Decades later, His results spoke quietly for him. Reasonableness doesn't make headlines, but it builds legacies. As you move forward into 2026 and beyond, remember that the future will always look uncertain up close. It always has. Every generation believes their era is uniquely complex. It isn't. Human behavior remains stubbornly predictable. Fear and greed will continue their dance. Your job is not to stop the dance, but to refuse being pulled onto the floor. Beginner or not, you always have this choice. You can chase, or you can build. You can react, or you can prepare. You can seek validation, or you can seek alignment. Alignment is where peace lives, a simple, well-understood plan, followed with patience, adjusted with humility, sustained with purpose. That is not just an investing strategy. That is a way of moving through the world. And if you do this long enough, something remarkable happens. Money becomes less loud, less emotional, less central. It fades into the background of a life lived with intention. That is real wealth. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of calm. Not endless wanting, but quiet sufficiency. Not domination of others, but mastery of self. You don't need to be extraordinary to achieve this. You need to be consistent, thoughtful, and patient for longer than most people are willing to be. And that is an advantage available to anyone listening right now. Then let us finish this gently, the way all meaningful journeys should end. You came here looking for investing advice, but what you were really searching for was clarity. Clarity about money, clarity about the future, clarity about yourself. If you remember nothing else from these moments together, remember this: wealth is not built by urgency. It is built by alignment. Alignment between who you are and how you invest. Alignment in your patience and your expectations. Alignment between your values and your actions. When those are in harmony, the numbers eventually follow. You don't need to be fearless. You don't need to be brilliant. You don't need to be early, lucky, or loud. You only need to be reasonable, consistently, for a very long time. The world will continue to tempt you with shortcuts. It will continue to celebrate speed over stability. It will continue to confuse attention with achievement. Let it. Your path is quieter. You invest not to impress, but to endure. You save not out of fear, but out of respect for your future self. You grow wealth not to escape life, but to support it. And one day, without drama or announcement, you will look back and realize something beautiful. The anxiety is gone. The rush has faded. The need to prove anything has dissolved. What remains is calm, choice, and peace. That is abundance, not the kind that shouts from the outside, but the kind that settles deeply within. So walk forward steadily. Let time do the heavy lifting. Protect your mind. Honor your patience, and trust that small, thoughtful steps taken consistently will carry you farther than any leap ever could. You are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where a wise journey begins, and that is more than enough.